Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Reason Versus. Before we get to the main event of the evening, please welcome to the stage the man, the myth, the legend, Andrew Heaton.
Hey, hello, hi, good evening, thank you. I'm Andrew Heaton. Here's what we're gonna do. I'm gonna kind of like have a friendly, vaguely funny chat about tech with you while your booze kicks in, so that you're limbered up before they debate it, right? So we're gonna talk about tech. I like tech, and I think it's ascendant, and so are nerds. Nerds have won. We have won. Nerds won the war. Like in the 80s, you go back and watch 80s films, it was like a slur to call somebody a nerd, and now everybody wants to be a nerd. I like bread, I'm kind of a bread nerd. Shut up. You like carbs, I own a Jedi robe. I was talking to a guy a couple weeks ago, and he's really into football, and he apologized. He went, sorry, I'm kind of a sports nerd. And I was like, shut your appropriating mouth. In high school, you were dating cheerleaders. I was building one. Been a tech guy for a long time. Yeah. Do you guys like Twitter? Yeah, I'm with the front row. I hate Twitter. I think about that 30, 40 times a day when I check Twitter. What about email? You like email? Let's give it up for email. Yeah, I like email. I'm an email guy. My Uncle Gary, I was talking to him very recently, like 4 years ago, okay? And my Uncle Gary goes, Andy, you know email? Yes, I'm familiar with it. And he goes, did you know after the subject line, there's like a whole other box you can write things in? And I'm not making this up. It turns out Gary thought that email was like a stock ticker that you sent, and no one corrected him because we all thought it was really funny not to tell Gary about that. What about Facebook? Do you all like Facebook? No, we don't like Facebook. I'm with the nose on this one. Here's why I don't like Facebook. So I was a history major when I was in college, and there was one, thank you. Everything we know about history comes from three sources. It comes from broken pottery, the propaganda of dead people, and the letters of Benjamin Franklin. That's it. All history is just lies or crap people left behind by accident, which means in the future they will understand our time based on the asinine bullshit you're putting on Facebook right now. In the 21st century, people hated Mondays, but they loved bread. They were bread nerds. They were very much in favor of that. What about Google? How do we feel about Google, audience? We like Google. I like Google too. I really like Google. But like, do you guys remember how life was prior to Google? Where just weird ideas could proliferate? Like when I was in middle school, there were just entire schools of thought that would proliferate that it is known, Khaleesi. It is like everybody in my neck of the woods, all 14-year-old boys in Oklahoma knew that yellow food dye number 5 shrinks your testicles. Does anybody getting some head nods? This was well known in the Boy Scouts of America, that if you ate Butterfingers, it would shrink your No, turns out to not be true. The reason my testicles are small is I got hit by a donkey. Nothing to do with yellow food dye number 5. Yeah. I think we're too attached to phones, though. Anybody tried to take a phone away from a teenager recently? I don't mean like a random one at the mall. Like you just go to Hot Topics, gimme! Like not that. Like you got like a kid, like a niece or something. They flip out if you take their phone. They threaten to kill themselves. And everybody's way too into their phones. Like everybody in general would rather lose a puppy than a phone. Although in their defense, we put less naked pictures on puppies, so there's at least some privacy concerns there. A few years ago, I was a substitute teacher until I was asked to stop, and the policy at that particular school was you could have a phone, you just couldn't take it out during class. If you took it out, the teacher had to take it. So that happened. Somebody took a phone out and I went, come here, I'm gonna take your phone and put it into the desk. I'll give it back to you at the end of the day. And he started crying. He went, Mr. Heaton, what if my friends need to get in contact with me? And I went, I don't know, you're 12. Everyone you know is in this room. You can just go talk to them. Is your wife going into labor? Is the president gonna call you, Timmy? Then I lost my phone. Oh my God, has anybody lost their phone? It's terrifying. Oh my God, I didn't have it for 3 days. For 3 days, I couldn't check my phone. And do you know what happened? Do you know what I missed out on? Nothing. Because it turns out, I'm not that special. And I've got great news. Neither are any of you. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm sure you're all very powerful lobbyists here in the DC metro area. And those of you that aren't lizard people, I'm sure you're beautiful rainbows and snowflakes. I'm not militating against that. You're all very special. What I'm saying is, if somebody has to reach you right now, it's not going to be fun. Like if I get a phone call later tonight, it's not going to be Peter Suderman going, "Oh, Heaton, thank God you picked up. Anna de Armas is over at our apartment. And she looks super emotionally vulnerable. And she wants to talk about whether the new Captain Kirk is as good as the shot." That's not going to happen. If somebody calls me at like 11 p.m. tonight, it's because I have to drive someone to the hospital or I have to help another congressman bury an intern. That seems like a really good thing to wind up on, so I think I'll finish that. Hey, so I do funny stuff for Reason on Reason TV. Check out Reason on YouTube. We have a whole comedy channel, significantly funnier than what you just heard. Honestly, I was phoning it in. So check that out on your time and enjoy the rest of the evening. Thank you.
And now for the main event of the evening. From Breaking Points, please welcome Ryan Grimm and Emily Jashinsky. And from Reason Magazine, Robby Soave and Elizabeth Nolan Brown. And your host for the evening, Peter Suderman.
Hello and welcome to Reason Versus. So this is the debate series that pits Reason Magazine against other publications and pundits in a battle of big ideas. This is our fourth debate over the last 12 months or so, and it's just been a great series. We're so happy to see so many of you here, including some regulars. It's just been wonderful to see all of you here. For this installment, Reason is taking on Breaking Points on the topic of big tech. So my name is Peter Zuckerman, and I'm going to be your moderator. Now, full disclosure, I always have to start with this. I do work at Reason, and you might assume that that biases me. But here's the thing, I also have an internet connection. And not only have I spent the past 20 years writing and posting stuff online professionally, I have sometimes read the comments. So it's possible that I can see both sides here. In any case, my job tonight is going to be to try to be fair, to enforce a sort of on-stage neutrality. You can think of me as this debate's very own personal version of the FCC. Because this evening, our two sides will be debating the resolution, big tech does more good than harm. Now, because this is a debate, there will be a winner, and that winner will be decided by you, the audience. The way this is going to work is there are going to be two votes. You're going to vote right now, that is, if you have not already, and then you are going to vote again after the debate. And the team that has shifted the most support to their side is going to win. So, if you have not yet cast your vote, please follow the instructions on the screen. And as you vote, I just want you to consider the resolution before us tonight. Big tech does more good than harm. So normally this is the part of the debate where I try to present a balanced overview of the big questions before us. But this evening, I want to do something a little different. I want to start with a story. It's a story about love and also about technology. So like many of you, I have an iPhone. I've had one since the second generation was released nearly 20 years ago. Back then, the iPhone was a much bigger deal than it is now. The iPhone represented the bold and transformative promise of new technology. It was new and it was exciting. Most people didn't have one yet. And to get one, you had to wait in line. To get mine, I spent the night sleeping on an air mattress in a parking lot in Clarendon, Virginia. True story. And I was accompanied by a friend, maybe a little bit more than a friend, a woman, on what turned out to be our very first date. Since then, we have been together just about the entire time. We see each other first thing in the morning, in many cases last thing before bed. We go back and forth about the news. We play games and communicate with friends, spend a lot of time with pictures of very cute big dogs. But inevitably, there have been ups and downs, frustrations, and if I'm being honest, maybe even some moments of resentment. Not with a woman. We've been happily married for 15 years now. I mean with the phone. It has been a long and topsy-turvy relationship, and that, I think, is actually a very good starting point for tonight's debate. Because when we talk about technology, when we talk about big tech and how we interact with it, we are talking in terms of a relationship. And as with every relationship, there are high points and there are low points. Big tech enables us to communicate seamlessly with our friends, our families, and the wider world. It powers businesses and hobbies. It connects us with a wider world of information and entertainment. And yet, it also takes up an increasingly large percentage of our time and attention, and it shapes culture and popular opinion in ways we are still beginning to understand. And there is this sense that it pushes people toward low quality and perhaps even deranging content and ideas that poison the public square. Doom scrolling, rage bait, brain rot. Those words and concepts did not exist until big tech came along. And that makes some people worry. So here's what I can promise you tonight. Tonight's debate will be the opposite of brain rot, the antithesis of rage bait. There will, I expect, be some strong opinions shared from this stage, but we aim to take these issues seriously, to argue about them with eloquence and intensity, and we're going to try to have a little bit of fun, too. Tonight, we have 4 top-notch debaters for Breaking Points, arguing against the resolution. You know them from the internet. It's Emily Jashinsky and Ryan Grimm. And for Reason, arguing for the resolution, we have Robby, Soave, host of Free Media, and Elizabeth Nolan Brown, author of Reason's Sex and Tech newsletter. All of our debaters have written and spoken extensively about tech policy, and they are exceptionally well qualified to make their respective cases. This is going to be a great debate. I am excited to witness it. If you have not cast your vote, this is your last chance to cast that initial vote because voting is closing now. All right, it's now time to have our debate. We are going to start with opening statements. 4 minutes for each debater. We're going to alternate between Reason and Breaking Points. Reason is going to go first. Reason, you are up.
So I flew in from Ohio yesterday. I live there, even though Reason's office and many of my colleagues are here in DC. My husband, as you might imagine, also lives in Ohio, even though he's a national political reporter. Thanks to smartphones and Slack and other tech tools that make remote work possible, we get to raise our kids around my massive family and have a lower cost of living while still doing the work we love. After boarding the plane to come here, I realized I forgot my headphones. I've been meaning to order a new pair anyways, so just before takeoff, I pulled up the Amazon app on my phone and ordered an inexpensive pair that got delivered to the Reason office that afternoon. On the plane, I caught up on some Substack reading. I'm subscribed to way too many, but it's so nice to see friends of mine, smart, interesting thinkers and writers who don't fit neatly into any political tribes, actually making a living by selling their writing directly to readers. After landing, I took a Lyft to the office. We take ride sharing for granted these days, but when I think back to how much more expensive and less convenient it was to get around DC when I first moved here 2 decades ago, I realize how lucky we are now. I went into the Reason office where some of my colleagues were writing for our website, but some of them were working on a podcast, some of them were prepping for a YouTube show, some of them were getting brainstorming about vertical videos that we put on Instagram and TikTok. Reason's had a print publication since 1968. Back then it was just a mimeographed zine, which, was the only way to bypass traditional media back then and get non-mainstream ideas and writing out there. Today, we have so many options for reaching new audiences and presenting alternative views. It's always nice to be in DC, but I miss my kids. Right before this started, I was FaceTiming with them, so I at least got to ask about their days and blow them kisses. I still appreciate that I can do that, but they just expect it, having grown up with the sort of video calls that I only saw on the Jetsons as a kid. It's this completely unremarkable part of their lives, just like the fact that they can have custom dance parties in our living room every day. Their tastes run the gamut from classic rock to Poopers the Magic Penguin, thanks to the music robot I bought on Amazon for $20 like a decade ago. Like most kids, they're excited about Christmas coming up. The little one wants this dino hobby horse that we saw at a local toy shop, but it was out, so I checked the manufacturer's website, also sold out. So then I Googled and I found a random home goods store in North Dakota where it was actually on sale and I had it shipped to me in a week. I could go on. The charity wish lists on Amazon that made donating to Christmas toy drives easy, the direct-to-consumer lab tests that have helped me track my early pregnancy hormone levels, the wearable glucose monitor that lets me check my blood sugar levels from my phone, the Maps app we used to get here tonight, the fact that many of you probably found out about this debate from social media. Big tech is something of an abstraction, a phrase used to conjure all sorts of boogeymen and bugaboos about modern living. When people hear big tech, they think about whatever they find most annoying about social media, or that friend whose kid is always on his tablet, or Josh Hawley ranting about how the Chinese algorithms on TikTok are turning all the frogs gay, or whatever he's on about this week. Or the fact that Instagram won't stop trying to show me reels about how old and lame millennials are. Maybe that one is just me. They tend to forget all the countless ways that big tech tools and platforms and devices make our lives easier on a daily or perhaps hourly basis. And not just easier, but richer, culturally and financially. More able to access alternative viewpoints, like reason, like breaking points, and subcultures, whether the traditional gatekeepers want you to or not. More connected, more knowledgeable. Contrary to popular belief, people who get their news online, even on social media, tend to be more informed and encounter more diverse viewpoints than those who don't. I'm not here tonight to defend everything that every big tech company does, especially not those godforsaken Gen Z supremacy reels, or to argue that big tech tools are always beneficial. And I'm not here to suggest that big tech companies are all run by altruists who have our best interests at heart. But I will argue that the tools and platforms and devices put out by big tech, those we think of as big tech and those we sometimes don't, really do, broadly speaking, do us more good than harm.
Breaking points. You're up. You have 4 minutes. Who wants to go first? The other podium. You get your own.
I didn't even see it. Ryan and I never prepare. It's sort of our signature. All right. We didn't know who was going to go first until about 2 seconds ago. So, all right. Well, I am a bit of a Luddite, but you don't actually have to disagree with most of what you will hear from our opponents to vote against them in this debate. They are correctly pointing out many, many clear benefits that big tech, which is abstract, I totally agree with that, has brought us. We don't really disagree on some of those points, and we're likely not going to dispute many of them. Where we do disagree is this cost-benefit calculation, and that's another way to think about this resolution. Have the costs of big tech outweighed the benefits? So in that sense, you actually don't need to disagree with the benefits. You just need to believe the costs are worse than those benefits, that big tech's harms outweigh its goods. Not that its goods don't exist at all. So I think a way to lose this debate would be to argue in the weeds about research from Jonathan Haidt and Jean Twenge, which Reason has done some super interesting work pushing back on, about whether big tech is causing mass harm to our cognition and memory and mental health. I find that research pretty persuasive, to be honest, but we don't need to even consider that gigantic question tonight, because big tech is rather openly and intentionally engaged in a concerted effort to trap us into a surveillance state that may never, ever, ever be undone. And this is likely a permanent condition of humanity that big tech built. It is no exaggeration to say we literally all now exist in a digital panopticon maintained by a public-private partnership between big tech and the government, one that fuels the global war machine too, as Ryan's going to talk about. And I don't think anything is worth that. Nor is anything worth the abuse that we've done to the First Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, by becoming conditioned to constant speech and privacy encroachments. So I'm going to address surveillance. Ryan is going to address the war machine. Small topics here for the opening. An FTC report in 2024 found what everybody already knows, that Meta, YouTube, and TikTok engaged in, quote, mass surveillance of consumers, listing the granular information these companies track and retain on their own platforms. And then when we go to other platforms, yes, we use these platforms willingly, of course, but that's not actually a salient question in the context of this debate, given that the, quote, harms here come from tech's decision to push us into making these trade-offs, into that classic sacrifice between safety and freedom. And then they make the decision to use the data in a harmful way. They build incredibly detailed pictures of our days, of our every waking hour. The ACLU recently noted, quote, already we're seeing AI used for monitoring in an increasing number of contexts, including vehicle driver monitoring, fun, workplace monitoring, gun detection, and the enforcement of rules. The Electronic Frontier Foundation points out that Microsoft is a large vendor of police-used surveillance tech. A law firm representing clients in New York City notes, quote, formed through a public-private partnership with Microsoft, what's called the Domain Awareness System, is an opaque surveillance command center that collects data from tens of thousands of camera feeds, license plate readers, radiological sensors, and other spyware for real-time warrantless surveillance of New Yorkers across the city. Everyone here likely knows about PRISM, but here's a reminder of big tech's role in PRISM from the ACLU. The NSA obtains communications such as international messages, emails, and internet calls directly from the US tech and social media companies like Facebook, Google, Apple, and Microsoft. The government identifies non-US person accounts it wishes to monitor and then orders the company to disclose all communications and data to and from those accounts, including communications with US persons. I'm running out of time here, but I should also just mention Google is not at all transparent about keystroke monitoring. Tech companies are actively looking to bring some of these methods that were first used in China to our stores. They actually advertise for the Chinese surveillance state. They advertise their products to the Chinese government. An Associated Press report just from September found that. And so the last thing I'll say is just even here at home, the CIA-backed venture capital fund has put lots of money into things like Palantir. It's not companies getting caught up and being involved compulsorily, is that an adverb? I don't know, we'll find out, into the surveillance state. They are willingly entering into it as a partnership. I don't think anything is worth that. So thank you.
Robby Soave, 4 minutes.
So excited to be doing this with my former Rising hosts and also my colleague Elizabeth Nolan Brown. Want everyone to just keep this in mind that I'm a bit hungry, which I will circle back to later during the programming. Now, before I take too much of my own time, when I say that big tech has been a gift to us and on balance has greatly improved our lives, I'm speaking very personally because I enjoy a career that is only possible in the age of large, powerful tech companies. And I'm not alone. Everyone on the stage is like that too, including my esteemed competitors who host 4 different internet commentary shows between them: Breaking Points, Drop Site, Undercurrents, and After Party. They are participants in this robust, ideologically diverse, thriving alternative media ecosystem that was created by and is sustained by big tech. So I would like to remind the audience that in very recent memory, opportunities for average citizens to make their voices heard were actually few and far between. Opportunities to engage with dissident viewpoints were even rarer. There was just a handful of cable news channels, some newspapers, and some news magazines, and those reflected the consensus views of the mainstream and of credentialed elites and went unchallenged, views most of us on this stage disagree with and think should have been challenged a lot earlier. 20 years ago, those are all still around, but they now compete against an exhaustive list of rivals that span the ideological spectrum, many of which made it big by utilizing the big tech platforms, Facebook, YouTube, and X, let's be specific. For just the political right, the list of media ventures that rely on big tech is so long it's hard to list them all, but I'll try. The Daily Caller, the Daily Wire, the Daily Signal, the Blaze, the Federalist, the Free Beacon, Town Hall, Red State, the Examiner, the Post Millennial, Real Clear Politics, Timcast. I'll take a breath, but you get the idea. All of those came into existence because of big tech, and I would argue have made us a more informed populace because of it. But of course, the realm of media and speech, we don't want to focus solely on that, even though we're journalists who care a lot about it. It's just one small subset of human existence that has been made better by large tech companies. As the night goes on, Elizabeth and I will continue to make you aware of those you might have forgotten and why those benefits drastically outweigh the associated costs that, of course, I will acknowledge exist, surveillance and everything else. But I would submit to you that the existence of Amazon by itself should be sufficient to make the case that big tech does more good than harm. Amazon, a company that has perfected, made improbably cheap and incomprehensibly swift, none of us understand it, but it has improved the process by which human desire is fulfilled. Big tech gives people food, and it gives people clothing, and it gives people medicine, and it gives it to us faster and cheaper and in greater volumes than ever before in human history. At the touch of a button, it appears on your doorstep by magic. Your recent ancestors would have thought it was magic. Now, to be sure, not all progress comes free of downsides. We can certainly discuss strategies to mitigate the harms. There are harms associated with big tech. But to concede that big tech does more ill than good is suggest that something ought to be done to stop it, probably with one of the solutions proposed by the foes of big tech: antitrust legislation, breaking up the companies, the elimination of Section 230, which does provide some liability protection from frivolous lawsuits, and so on, or onerous regulations on AI. I submit to you this: breaking up tech companies or subjecting online platforms to greater liability or dramatically slowing or even halting AI research would not make us better off. We know it would make us poorer, dumber, hungrier, and it would make us less free. If Google did not exist, you would have less access to information, or if it was smaller. If Amazon did not exist or was broken up, you would have less access to everything. And as much as it's become fashionable to rail against your smartphone, I submit that no one in this room would return willingly to an era 20 years ago before you had it in your pocket.
Ryan, 4 minutes.
So I actually doubt that's the case, and that's something that you guys should think about in the next hour, of whether or not you would go back to that. Going back 20 years ago, just to respond briefly to Robby's fair point, that most of you all, found your way here by the internet, and that we make our living on the internet. That wasn't always the case. I'm old enough that I started writing for a newspaper. That was a thing. Yeah. It would be printed every week. It's called the Washington City Paper. Washington City Paper, not the. It was an alt weekly. Everybody would read it in the barbershops and in the bars, and it was a way of pushing back against established power. In the Capitol today, in the desk that I have, there are audio cassettes that are mine from when I first started covering Congress. So this world that we live in can exist without the things that are being described here. Elizabeth talked about reading Substacks on the plane. That's amazing. You can also read books and magazines on the plane. Like that can happen. And so it is not our obligation here to argue, as Emily said, that big tech has no benefits whatsoever. And it's not our obligation to argue against the case that big tech doesn't even have a right to exist. That's an antitrust argument. That's a legislative argument. That's separate. What we're talking about here is big tech making the world a better place, or on net, is it making it a worse place? And to her point, to Emily's point, I would so in Gaza right now, there has been 2 years of genocide. And I think anybody who has looked closely at it can only conclude that the genocide has been made significantly more possible and more vicious by the use of big tech there. At Dropsite, we've done reporting on Microsoft's use of their Azure platform. There's been a lot of we did that reporting in partnership with 972. 972 has reported on a program that the IDF called Where's Daddy? And I think if you want to understand where all of this is heading, understanding the program Where's Daddy is a perfect one. So what the IDF did is they used these big tech capacities, and they used AI to first you do decades worth of surveillance. They used decades worth of surveillance on Palestinians inside of Gaza. So they fed all of this data that they had into AI, and they asked it, who is Hamas? What they also did, as 972 reported, is they lowered the threshold for what counted as a person who could be targeted from the air. Previously, the only type of person would be a very high-level figure. They changed that calculation and said anybody who is in Hamas counts for this. Then they said, okay, who are these people and where do they live? Now, if you've looked at the kind of registry of the people who have been killed and released by the Ministry of Health, you have an enormous number of people whose first name is Muhammad. Enormous. You also, because Palestinians have not effectively been able to leave Gaza, you have a much smaller number of families and surnames in Gaza than you have probably anywhere else in the world. So if you come up with a name, the chances that there's going to be a very similar name or the same name of that person it's almost guaranteed. The question is, how many of the same are you going to have? And so this was a problem that the IDF decided that AI and big tech could solve for them. And so they would feed it in. The AI would spit out an answer and say, this person here is a legitimate target, and here's their address. And they called it Where's Daddy because they waited until they came home and then hit the entire building to make it collapse on this one individual person. And I don't think there's any world in which we can argue that we're better off for that technology existing.
All right, now that we have heard from each debater and they've made their opening cases, we're going to let them talk to each other. So for the next 20 minutes or so, we're going to go back and forth. I want you guys to make your arguments, press your points, just talk to each other. I'm going to be the moderator, I'm going to be in between, but for the most part, I'm going to try to stay out of things except to clarify stuff and to move things along. We do want to cover as many points as possible. But I am going to start with an observation. In those opening statements, it was kind of interesting that these folks made what was fundamentally a conservative case for big tech, that it is pro-family, pro-work-life balance, that it makes us freer. And on this side, we had an anti-big tech case that was fundamentally libertarian, that it enables the police state and war, and that it is a surveillance operation. And so I think that's actually a good place for us to start this segment here. And just, if you guys want to just sort of talk about, like, how do you guys feel about their libertarian case against big tech? And how do you guys feel about their quite conservative, pro-family, almost socially conservative case for big tech?
What do you guys like most about the cops? What are you doing here?
Okay. Well, look, you're listening to all of us. One of the reasons I wanted to do this debate is I love these guys. They're smart people. They do great work. We're trying to, we all concede that there are harms associated with big tech and good things associated with big tech. So we're just both trying to convince you that you can tally up more of them on our side than theirs. What I would respond to Ryan about, who's done great work through his publications on documenting what I think are the atrocities of the Israeli government's actions in Gaza, no doubt, and I would vote to constrain government from using big tech in lethal ways, absolutely. I would say that, but again, big tech has, through TikTok and other social media sites, has made people more aware of the atrocities of this war than it would be the case without this technology. Yes, of course, newspapers served the same function in the Vietnam War, but maybe that war would have been shorter as well if we had these images on social media sooner. And also, violence is very... for thousands of years, human beings have killed each other horrifically without spectacular technology. They can use spectacular technology to kill each other too, but the killing part was always part of it. Now the knowledge of it, the accountability is part of it, I would say, because of the tech.
Just respond to that quickly, because I think your strongest point would be that TikTok and Instagram enabled the globe to see what was happening in real time. But I also think it's your weakest point, because if you were defending tech, I think you'd have a pretty actually easy case. I think we would quibble around what it's done to the family and the way that it's this distraction and all of those common debates. But overall, tech itself is making people's lives better and also is connecting people around the world. The big is where you're going to have the biggest problem. Because what happened as soon as it became clear that people were able to start seeing what was going on inside Gaza. At Dropsite, we did one report based on a whistleblower who leaked us a lot of data from inside of Meta. The Israeli government was able to go to Facebook and take down millions of posts, millions of those posts. Now, some still got through, obviously, because people saw it. The average that it took them to take it down was something like 7 seconds. So it was clearly like there's automated, and so clearly it's automated.
Which means clearly it was in cooperation. The government was in cooperation.
Yeah, yes, and then separately, what happened to TikTok? They're like, well, forget this. We're shutting it down. Mitt Romney, Blinken, the House author, I forget his name, the guy who
Gallagher.
Yeah, who wrote the House bill. They all said the reason we're shutting it down is because it's giving people access. So they're shutting it down. They sold it to, Ellison, who is from Oracle, which is created by the CIA. So they sell it to a government thing to shut it down. So tech good, the big bad, because of the big, the government can then come in with a flick of the wrist and just go to a couple of platforms and shut everything down.
Tech is enabling state censorship, is what they're saying, right? Which is something that libertarians don't like.
First, though, I just want to say, I think this is part of the problem with when we talk about big tech and we have these sort of debates is that, Ryan there just sort of said, well, tech is good, but big tech is bad. But how do we define big tech? I mean, all of the different platforms that I mentioned in my thing, a lot of those are big tech too, and they're not doing any of this stuff that you're talking about. I feel like there's this tendency when we want to demonize big tech to say, okay, well, only the companies that are doing the really bad stuff are big tech, and then all of the rest of them are just regular tech and it's okay, which then sort of, makes the argument that it's bad really easy if you're only going to define it as these, big bad companies. But when you actually look at what is big technology, it is much broader than these few companies that we've mentioned that are cooperating with the government.
If the problem with big tech is big government, I agree that big government is really bad and we should constrain its behavior.
Okay, well then we just won. I really think that's true because all of the benefits come with, you ask for the Caesar salad without the dressing, they don't do it. All of the benefits here come with gross, constant Fourth Amendment violations. Constant.
But the government is doing that with or without the help of big tech.
But it doesn't mean that big tech is causing more good than harm by cooperating. So that's what I would just say back to you guys. My question would be, which, quote, big tech companies that we're including in this umbrella term that you think are not involved in mass surveillance or public-private partnerships that build the surveillance state? Because even we were talking about Amazon, AWS is a scourge. And so I have a hard time thinking of a lot of them that aren't part of this.
Let me put it this way. The people who are worried about the influence of big tech in our government are using exactly those arguments to give the government more power to work with big tech. They're saying big tech is too powerful. That's why we want you to create a backdoor into Facebook and WhatsApp and whatever else is allowed to operate in the US so that we can access those things. And you're right, big tech is confused to what level it should comply or fight or go along, but those are all government problems to me, not problems with tech being big. If they were bigger, if they were more powerful relative to the government, they could tell them to take a hike on all the things you're worried about.
I think by acknowledging that the government is a problem, and if it was framed around the government, that you...
We were never going to argue about whether the government's a problem,
but if you, by that acknowledgement, and the reason that Emily and I say, well, this debate is over here is because there really is no serious line between big tech, the big four, big five major tech companies, and the government. For instance, and this is something that should have the hackles of all libertarians up in arms, we have jackbooted thugs running all over the country, scooping people up, and citizens came together and built an app to allow other private individuals to inform their neighbors when those government jackbooted thugs were in the neighborhood. It went viral. Everybody was downloading. It was extremely effective. Donald Trump picked up the phone, told Apple, I want this off the App Store, and it was nuked. Done. And so by creating, if you had 50 tech companies that have 50 app stores, and the application can be pulled onto your phone through any of these app stores, then Donald Trump wouldn't be able to call Apple and just nuke the entire thing. So what you're doing is you're handing a loaded gun to Donald Trump
that's true.
and just hoping that he doesn't pull the
we're
trigger.
seeing right now with like age verification statutes, right? It doesn't matter how big or how small you are, and people are having to comply with these, and the smallest companies are getting hit the hardest by these government regulations and these government mandates. I don't think that you can say, when we're talking about big government being the problem, it's not a matter of if you're a big company, tech company, or a small company, you are still going to be under the reign of that and subject to that power. And I don't think that it's the size of the tech companies here that matter. But I want to address something Emily said too, though. Because when we're talking about surveillance by tech companies, I think that word gets thrown around, and that word is very scary, and especially when we're also talking about actual government surveillance and things like that. But I don't like to use that term when you're talking about, tech companies monitoring your data for private reasons, for, commercial reasons, because that is worlds different than sort of government surveillance. And also that can be beneficial. Again, you are voluntarily giving your data to these tech companies in exchange for being able to use them for free. Part of the contract is that you are, letting them, harvest data so that you can get all these wonderful services for free. But also, sometimes they use that data to help us. They use that data to filter out bad things that you wouldn't want to see. They use that data to help target what you do see so that you actually get to see the things that you care about. People hate targeted advertising, and I just don't understand why, because it's so much better to go on to an app like Instagram and actually see ads for things that I care about rather than ads for just random things. So a lot of this, if you call it surveillance, it gets very scary, but it actually can be neutral to beneficial.
But yeah, I would say this isn't about targeted ads. This is about PRISM. This is about the NSA. This is about all of the data that gets built up, and we genuinely actually don't know when the government is tapping into it, and when these tech companies, like Google is a really good example, is getting keystroke warrants in the US. They have zero transparency about that. And I just think that we now live in a world where we've been numbed and conditioned to accept what I think is a Fourth Amendment violation every single day at a mass scale, in a sense that not only is that wrong, but it has also conditioned us to accept a different level of freedom between ourselves and our government. And so it's really the public-private partnership that big tech was built on, profits off of, and deploys every single day that I think is what we're talking about.
So NSA was doing that with phone records, though, like long before these big tech companies existed. Again, I think what we're talking about is not the technology, it is the government.
Using the technology, and with the technology using willingly. The technology companies being willingly used, and in some cases
how willing you can be if
government.
your existence, though, depends on having to...
Exactly.
I guess that's what we're coming down to. Like, in my ideal world, if Donald Trump or whoever it is says to the tech company, I want you to take down some post. In my ideal world, the tech company says, okay, that's cute. Screw you, man. Because they're bigger and more powerful, and the government is constrained by the Constitution and doesn't do very much.
That was awesome in 2020. That went great with the Hunter Biden laptop.
Right, no, they didn't know. I concede that they don't do that because the government is too powerful. Not because the tech company is too powerful, because the government is. But we're going to be arguing about this one all night.
It seems like the biggest impasse here, at least up front, is that you guys think that big tech and big government are separable, that they are not necessarily the same thing, and that you guys are fundamentally arguing that the existence of big tech empowers big government and makes it worse. Okay, so I think we have established this sort of point of disagreement, and I'd actually like to just talk about some of the other things that you guys raised in your opening statements. In particular, Robby raised this idea that big tech has enabled a kind of press freedom that is particularly good for alternative viewpoints, as well as specifically for conservative viewpoints, and that it has actually made the world a better place for news consumers, but in particular for those who were shut out by the gatekeepers who dominated in the age of newspapers.
I'm happy to concede actually a lot of those points, and I think, honestly, I see ways in which that could go very, very wrong. I think there was a little experiment that we had with that in 2020, and Ryan's point about the Israeli government now having like a pipeline into Meta in that country, and we know Meta operates differently in other countries. So that, they're willing to do this in other countries. So I think we've created a system that has so much power concentrated in so few hands that we've seen what happens with those switch flips, because one person can get a call from the FBI and switch the flip. We've seen that, but thankfully, I mean, our institutions have held up and resisted what we saw in 2020. But I think we've created a system where I'm very worried that power exists.
Yeah, and so control of the distribution of news is now down to a tiny handful of players. I launched a tiny little publishing company with a friend in like 2017 or something, just because we're like, oh, the technology allows for this kind of thing now, because you can do print on demand. And it turned out that Amazon owns everything. They own every single company: the printer, the distributor, the wholesaler, and obviously on the sales side. And they figured out a way to make it so that they take something like 90+% of all of the money through it. And so there's nothing left then to pay workers and to pay writers. So in that sense, fueling creativity, there's no other way of doing it. The fact that you're able to put together a live event, by the way, is remarkable, considering that Live Nation and Ticketmaster have basically made that pretty impossible to make any profit at all, at this level. But the broader point is that, okay, that's great that some town hall and all these guys have done well. I'm not so sure I'd vote that they've made the world a better place, but that's fine. As somebody who does reporting that runs up against what the establishment wants out there, I can feel the walls closing in. You can already see channels shutting down. TikTok being just the most obvious example, but Instagram, when the pressure came on Instagram, they flicked a switch and they're like, okay, now this type of content, isn't going to flow anymore. Twitter, my God, we go in and out of suppression, constantly, despite having people who will go directly to Musk and be like, what are you guys doing? They're one of the only lefty outlets that's even willing to play ball on your trash site. Stop messing with them. And so if you're constantly worried about what you're saying is going to offend a handful of oligarchs, then you don't really have the freedom to do the reporting you need to do.
I would respond to that, but I take that point totally. And as a commentator who makes use of social media, I face to kind of muzzling or censorship from the companies, often not at necessarily their own behest, but because, as we later learn, the government was trying to twist their arm, not them freely choosing that. Even if let's say I ignore the fact of the government actually twisting their arms, which again I say is not a big tech problem, but a big government problem, even if it was the companies freely choosing it, I would still say, you say walls closing in, I'm just not seeing, okay, let's say there's these giant tech oligarchs running everything, so what should be the consequences of that? And they're trying to silence dissident opinions. It's just, we are living in I think an inarguably freer and healthier time for dissident perspectives than ever before. That some companies, traditional legacy companies, if you're running a CBS News or something, you need a dramatic intervention, but people are just posting and creating. There's more content uploaded to YouTube every second than has existed in all of human history before it. That's a fake statistic, but you get my point. It doesn't feel like the walls are closing. It feels like the walls have fallen off.
Also, big tech is dynamic, right? I mean, if we'd had this conversation 10 years ago or something, it'd be like, well, if I can't use Facebook to get, the word out about this event, it's going to be useless because Facebook is the only option. And Facebook is now, Facebook is deprioritizing news. So how are we possibly going to get out? And then there's the rise of TikTok, or then there's the rise of Substack. Recently, there were stats about, the most used media, and Blue Sky, Truth Social, and Threads all have pretty strong showings. So, and, there was not very long ago where everyone was like, no one can ever compete with Twitter, and they're getting up there and gaining on Twitter. So I think this idea that just because some certain platforms might become less hospitable to certain sorts of speech, there will never be any other big tech platforms that come along and are friendly to that speech is just not true. It's just opposite of what we've seen happening over the past decade.
But this goes to the tech versus big tech point again. So tech good, big tech terrible. And
what are you saying? TikTok and Blue Sky is not big tech?
And so Blue Sky is definitely not big tech. And the U.S., by the way, was on the brink of creating a TikTok. It was called Vine, and then Facebook deliberately destroyed the innovation. They bought it was catch and kill.
Twitter.
They crushed it.
Was that Twitter?
No, Facebook took it in and smothered it. Or they built a little clone. to like smother it. And they did the same with Snapchat. But look at Google. Like Google's become like unusable. Something like 50% of the searches now go to either something within Google or something they're advertising. That was not the case before, because they've realized that because there's no competition, they can just continue to do that. What that has done is that has collapsed, and I'm sure Robby, you can tell us the numbers at Reason. Search traffic at Reason must fall off the cliff. Which means people aren't going to find their way to
big
your
tech
ideas.
isn't necessarily good for any specific media venture, but I would disagree that Google is becoming less useful. It's now implemented AI in its search, and the answers I get to questions I ask it are more detailed and precise and accurate than ever before. It knows. I don't even have to use precise language to get it to tell me what I'm asking it. It like it's in my brain and already knows. I think it's getting better.
Okay, so we only have about 2 minutes left in this segment. I did want to get to 2 final topics, one for each team. Ryan, in his opening statement, talked about old newspapers, about the analog world. Robby, I want to ask you about this because I've heard you talk about Wicked and about movies from 30 years ago and how you think they look better. What do you think of this sort of argument that the analog world was better and that big tech has enabled a kind of slopification of culture?
Yeah, the issue is I just can't separate that argument from my general. We all succumb to nostalgia at exactly the same point in our lives and say the time period of like when you were 14, everything was better, man. I'm 37, so that's happening to me. I like things the way they were in the 90s. I think the music's better and the movies were better. Do I actually think that's an indictment of big tech trends? No, I think that's me just becoming an old man.
Okay, final bit here. Robby did mention in his statement the solutions part of this, antitrust, breaking up these companies, and he kind of argued that those things wouldn't work, and in fact, if you agree they wouldn't work, then that makes the case for big tech. What do you guys think about the kind of the policy responses here, and what do you want to do if big tech is so bad?
I would argue that the enshittification, which is a word that's now in the dictionary because it legitimately describes the process of big tech consolidating its power and then actively making their products worse. All of that comes about because we haven't had any enforcement. We've allowed Facebook and these other places to just scoop up all of their rivals and kill innovation. The last point I made in this section is that we're also making this argument in a pre-crisis moment. Like this video will live on I assume we're recording this. This will live on. It will be on YouTube. This will live on YouTube, and so people can watch it in a couple of years after the crisis that is caused by the collapse of AI, by the data center build out, gutting everything. The third of the stock market or whatever. Is now driven by these gigantic data center build-outs and this fake moving of securities in and out of so all of the good feelings that we have about the tech right now is before that crisis. Think about how you're going to feel about it when I don't know exactly when it's coming. If I did, I'd get very rich. But it's coming, and everybody knows it's coming. And when it does, it's going to be an absolute bloodbath, and we're going to think about big tech and this AI data center build out a little bit differently.
And I would just add, I think that's an interesting question. I think it's also beside the point of the narrow resolution about whether big tech is doing more harm than good. Because I will concede that there's good debate about antitrust. I'll concede that there's good debate about movies. But Ryan opened this by talking about technology that now exists because of public-private partnerships, compulsory cartels that will allow you to target a human being without due process and vaporize them in a second. And I just feel like this entire conversation, if we don't consider that and all of these other sort of big questions, is almost beside the point.
All right, something is coming, and if you have been to one of these debates before, you might have an idea what that is. So we take these debates very seriously. These are rigorous, intellectual debates, but this is also a reasoned debate, which means we like to have a little bit of fun, which means that tonight we have asked all of our debaters to make their case using props. This is something that you can bring on stage, a physical object, or perhaps a video, something that you can put on the screen. We have suggested that perhaps technology should be employed in your prop segment, and in fact, I have described this as, it's a little like making a TikTok. You talk to the phone, except you guys are the phone, and you show people something that makes your argument. So we are now going to move on to our prop segment. Each debater, gets 90 seconds. Once again, we are going to go back and forth between reason and breaking points, and we're going to start with reason.
Okay, I'll go first. I took this real seriously. Definitely respected this segment. Where's my thing? Oh, is it under your seat? Yeah. Okay. Remember when I said I was hungry? Do you want me to go stand over there?
Stand where you like.
Okay.
Just leave the
Remember
microphone.
when I said I was hungry earlier? Okay. What I was really feeling like was some bananas, which I ordered on Uber Eats.
We tariff the bananas, Robby.
And they arrived here in 27 minutes. I actually did it while we were debating. This was my prop bananas in case they didn't show up, but Eric hid some bananas on the stage that actually arrived as we were discussing, which again goes to the tremendous power. Well, you can't underrate this. It's
What did it
so
cost?
hard. What?
What does a banana cost?
It costs $5 because I tipped the poor guy who bought me these bananas $4. So don't you lefties
half
ever
price.
say
Half
I was.
price.
Lucille Bluth. We're gonna grow them in Arkansas.
I
But
think
it's
you just
safe.
literally did the meme. How much could it cost? It's a banana.
Let me quickly say the advantage of this, what is actually saving us, what the real value of big tech, you talk about getting distracted by your phones, is the time given back to you. It took me 5 seconds to get this. If I had to go out and get it, it would take me 45 minutes. There are only 24 hours in the day. I want to spend more of that time with the people I care about, whoever that is, doing whatever makes me happier. I don't want to waste 45 minutes going out to get a banana. That is the value big tech gives to us at scale. With this large market share that only a large company, yes, I could order a pizza, I can't get something that's actually made in South America here this easily without the power of an actual big company that has mastered this kind of exchange. I'll remove my...
All right, 90 seconds to breaking points. You can spend your time however you want, including ordering bananas.
I lived in New York in 2000, and on the phone you could get that was doable. But anyway, so very quickly, I wanted to introduce you to the on-again, off-again richest man in the world, who runs a company that was created by the CIA. And let's see, I have a minute and a half left. We could play this clip as many times as would fit in that amount of time.
So we have a video clip. Are we ready?
During a recent Oracle Q&A, Ellison said AI will soon play a major role in monitoring society through a vast network of interconnected cameras, including security systems, police body cams, and vehicle dash cams.
Everyone would see it. Your body cams will be transmitting that. The police will be on their best behavior because we're constantly recording, watching and recording everything that's going on. Citizens will be on their best behavior because we're constantly recording and reporting everything that's going on.
I think we still have time. Should we roll that one more time? How about once more?
We can play the video again. It's your 90 seconds.
During a recent Oracle Q&A, Ellison said AI will soon play a major role in monitoring society through a vast network of interconnected cameras, including security systems, police body cams, and vehicle dash cams.
Everyone would see it. Your body cams will be transmitting that. The police will be on their best behavior because we're constantly recording, watching and recording everything that's going on. Citizens will be on their best behavior because we're constantly recording and reporting everything that's going on.
Just wanted to make sure nobody missed any of the good parts of that.
I would just note that at the bottom of that video, the News Network, like and subscribe, visit our website, please subscribe to our podcasts. We are, in fact, recording all of this, just like Larry Ellison said. So, Liz, what do you have for us?
All right, so I wanted to take the anti-tech position seriously, so I
Microphone.
Here.
You gotta use this.
I came here tonight without my phone, and I took some notes about how it's been going not having a phone today. So I'm just gonna pull my notebook out and and use them. Hold on, I got encyclopedia here, some CDs and newspaper. Heaton, can you come up here and help me for a second? Camera, my AOL sign-on CD, my radio, photo album, tape recorder, planner, address book. Got a couple of DVDs. Here, hold on. It's in here somewhere. Oh, hold on. Phone.
But are they Blu-ray?
Calculator, a tape. My map, my stamps, my envelope. There's a charger for that cordless telephone here. Okay. Okay. All right. My notebook. Thank you. Okay. My life without a phone. Holy hell! Thank goodness we live in 2025. This is a fraction of the stuff you would need to accomplish all the things that you can accomplish with this little device that I actually do have here in my bag, and we should not take that for granted.
Emily, I see you have brought a piece of technology, maybe two of them, on stage.
Yes, here's the ancient technology called the scissors. But all right, so I too have an iPhone that I do not take for granted, nor do we need to take it for granted, may I remind you, for the purposes of this debate. So I'll go ahead and take a picture of all of you. You're looking great. All right. And then I will do it here on the Polaroid. All right. Okay, let's see. How do you even use a Polaroid? Nobody knows anymore. Yay, there we go. Flash was on. All right. So, come on. It's jammed. No, it's not. Okay. So, when I decide that I don't want the government to know what the hell I was doing here tonight, what I wanted to do was bring a lighter. This is a reason debate, after all. I felt like it would be okay to bring a lighter.
I'm sure someone in the crowd has one.
Yeah, I would guess Ryan has one. Now, since I'm not using a lighter, I'll go ahead. I'll just cut this up with the high tech of the scissors, made by Fiskars, probably also a defense contractor. The other thing I was going to do was bring a hammer and make you think I was actually going to destroy my phone. I won't do that, but I will remind you that even if I did take a hammer to this phone, even if I did take a hammer to it, I would have no control over some of the data being accessed by the government. This is freedom. This is freedom. This is tyranny. This is tyranny, and no libertarian, let alone good American, has any business defending it. Thanks, everyone.
All right, our debaters have talked to each other. They've made their case, but we want to bring the audience into this too. So for the next 20 minutes or so, we are going to let you ask the questions. There is a microphone right here. You should line up. We want to answer as many of your questions as possible. So please, as you ask your question, remember that it should be short, succinct, pithy, not very long. And also, a question. Tim Carney, do you want to ask the first one?
No.
What about the children? Social media has absolutely, a lot of people argue, contributed to a huge decline in mental well-being, a huge increase in anxiety and depression among the youth. So, what about the children?
Is our children learning?
Yeah, I'll say that, that is really debated. And in the past 3 years, mental health amongst college students has actually been improving every single year. We have not been getting less use of technology in these past 3 years. We see certain countries where these sort of things have been happening, where we've had these mental health declines, and we see countries with very similar phone adoption and technology uses where they haven't happened. If this was something that we could increasing rates of diagnoses of depression and anxiety or things like that, if this was something that we could just attribute to smartphones or social media, then we should see this happening in all the places where smartphones and social media are prevalent. We should see this happening in a linear fashion as these things become more pervasive in our lives. And the fact that we haven't seen that makes me think that there are other cultural and social factors that can explain things. And just because this is correlated, again, everyone knows that's not causation, but the fact that there are so many other potential explanations and it doesn't fit with the data of what we're seeing elsewhere.
I would just quibble with the claim that over the last 3 years, young people haven't actually been using less technology. I think there's been some kind of deliberate moving away from it on their part, but also your baseline is a max out of screen time during the pandemic, and so it kind of makes the reverse point. It kind of like the more time they were spending on it, when they were at the max, they're at the trough of mental well-being. As they're spending less, then they're gradually climbing out of that hole. One other point that Tim didn't raise is that the collapse in birth rates is also correlated with, as he writes about in his book, Family Unfriendly.
Available on Amazon.
Correlation is not causation, but there are so many correlates to the introduction of the iPhone that it becomes difficult to believe that all of the misery around it doesn't have some connection to it. So literally the actual birth rate familial collapse connected, at least correlated with the introduction of the iPhone.
I absolutely quickly believe that excessive social media use is bad for some young people, just like generally excessive use of anything is potentially harmful. But what I struggle with is that you hear a lot about, in some cases, cherry-picked studies that do show harms for certain groups. The most damning study of Instagram, again, it's self-reported survey data that I think it was girls between the ages of maybe 13 and 15. Some of them were having a bad experience on Instagram. That's one group. If you surveyed those same people about whether school makes you depressed, 90% of them would have said yes. That's not an argument for getting rid of school. It's an argument that being a young person is very difficult and very stressful, and social media confuses that. A lot of young people also use social media to become more informed than generations previously were and to connect with their friends in healthy ways. I'm definitely for limiting excessive smartphone use, empowering parents to do so. But I'm very wary, and I know censorship-inclined people would love to make the argument that this is why, or even people who want to drone strike more people in Gaza would love to make the argument that this is why we have to take TikTok away. It's just so harmful for those kids.
That'll be the next reason versus debate. Should we get rid of school? Another question.
Yes.
What about the workers? We have seen on news networks that sometimes workers at big companies have been maltreated or underpaid, and is that even a problem? And if so, is there a solution to it?
I mean, Amazon definitely surveils its workers in like very detailed, granular ways. We've talked to people who have worked, especially now it's like Christmas season. I think that technology, how it could be deployed in the future, is also a bit concerning. I would say it's still tangential to the argument we're making, and same thing with the "is our kids learning" question from Tim, which is. I think these are like totally good debates to have, and they're happening. But the question of whether big tech does more harm than good is I think it's pretty easily answered if you just consider the questions of the surveillance state and the war machine.
I don't think we can separate, though, the is big tech good or bad from the ways that big tech has actually empowered workers, though. I mean, we've talked a lot about journalism and things like that. But I mean, also, like, I live in Ohio. I have a lot of cousins who have been, Uber and Lyft drivers, and it's because they have wanted schedules that allow them to pick up their kids from school, or because they're between jobs. And I think that there's just so many things, like in ways with the gig economy, that it's given us increased flexibility, flexibility with your schedule, flexibility to live where you want, and there are just countless ways that big tech has empowered workers as well.
Right, but just imagine if there were 12 rideshare companies rather than 1.5. Then the drivers wouldn't then just be at the whim of whatever the company decides to pay, and I do think that's a very fair point. And also, if we are talking about very big tech is the biggest exploiter of H-1B visas, which doesn't, and they're brutal to those workers. Those workers, if they can't challenge their bosses, they're paid less than workers without those visas. And so on net, that has not been good either. At the same time that big tech is like laying off, hundreds of thousands of workers.
And that was actually our last recent debate. It was about immigration. We want to get through as many of these questions as possible, so let's move on.
I'd like to understand how big tech plays into correlation with coups and revolutions and what y'all's perspective is on that, specifically what's happening in the AES with Burkina Faso, Niger, and Mali specifically, and also with the Arab Spring in general. Thanks.
Yeah, a lot of these African governments, particularly West African governments, when they started facing unrest, turned actually particularly to little tech, which is kind of a subset of big tech. A lot of Israeli cyber surveillance firms, and instead of kind of addressing the concerns of the population, just decided what we're going to do is surveil everybody and change our constitutions and launch draconian crackdowns. And you see that time after time, which then leads to instability and coups. So I think that to the extent that this technology enables governments to become more authoritarian, it actually ends up creating the kinds of instability that you're talking about.
But do you think, this is an honest question to you, Ryan, and you know more about this stuff than I do. Do you think this technology I mean, it seems like kind of a wash to me. The authoritarian governments, it's a tool to them to do this kind of surveillance. It also can help revolutionaries organize. It can help dissident perspectives get out. It seems like possibly just a wash to me. Like, are the revolutionary groups struggling for freedom, are they better off, with no kind of social media or any kind of tech in the company? I would probably say not.
Right. I think in the era that sort of preceded big tech, where the proto-big tech era of 2008, 9, 10, 11, as it's starting to consolidate, that tech, that social media, was a force for liberation. You saw it in the Arab Spring. You saw it in Iran. You saw it all over the world. They have since locked that down, and it's no longer a wash. Now it's more a tool for authoritarianism.
And I'll just add, big tech is like the original big tech, RCA. Like there's Guatemala. They were putting false radio reports out to foment the coup in Guatemala during the Cold War. And so I don't necessarily disagree with you, Robby, that it's a wash. I think what's really concerning is the level of control, given now that all of these apps, we have exported our personal, professional lives onto the devices, and in some cases onto just one app that you can flip a switch. So that, I think, it has escalated, is what I would add.
Next question.
Yeah, so there's one element that I do want to add. It feels like all of the sort of negative externalities and sort of negatives of big tech we've discussed have been in the context of public-private partnership or with governments. I just want to talk about the instances where social media companies or big tech companies on their own volition have done malevolent things. I'm thinking of Facebook experimenting with making their users feel worse, showing them content that makes them feel worse, see what that does for their engagement. I'm thinking of all the circumstantial evidence we have of sort of stuff that Elon Musk engaged with on X getting more reach. So in all of those instances, sort of what do you all make of the fact that these companies do have enough size, enough power to, like, independently of their own volition, act malevolently?
That just sounds like a challenge to this side.
But the argument, since most of us are agreeing that we're all agreeing that the tech is good, I guess the argument you have to make is that if there were, and I know the argument you guys are making, is that if there were 12 companies, is that the number we want over there, 12 companies instead of 4, then there would be less malevolence on each of their part. There would also be a lot less ability to use their increased share and their giant teams and their billions of dollars that they spend every year on research and development. It's $300 billion last year to make the product better for you so that it works the way you want it to work. That's not to, again, validate every single thing they've done. I think the idea that these products would each be better if what we now went in affirmatively and started breaking them up and saying, the Gemini team can't collaborate with the search team because that's a different product. Like, these are people working together collaboratively to improve human experience, and now we're going to try to silo, especially for this product, this very interconnected internet product, to say, well, now you're this firm, and you're this firm, and you're this firm, and you can't get any bigger. The government's decided what size is the right size, and we know exactly what size that is. No collaboration. I don't see how on net that would be better. I think that's a fantasy, the idea that it would be.
I just don't, I would question the idea that some of that is malevolence. Mark Zuckerberg Mark Zuckerberg doesn't know what's going to make you feel bad. You know, some might argue that news that is bad is also more impactful and important for people to see. Some might argue that, you know, the kind of inflammatory content that one person might think, oh, this is designed to make you feel bad, is actually the news that's the most, you know, the kind of content that's the most important to people. They want to see what people are going to engage with. I don't think it's, you know, malevolence to see testing what kind of things that people most like to engage with and what the impact is. I think that that's actually important for a company to be doing.
And just one quick clarification on the point that we've been making about tech good, big tech bad. That's the tech up to now and preceding it. The tech that is coming, we don't know. And I know in the libertarian mind, the idea of consequences is very good because when there are consequences, then that disincentivizes that bad behavior. We don't need stop signs. If enough people drive through the intersection and get in accidents, then they'll be more careful in the intersection, whatever the libertarian argument is.
It works in Italy.
But that's
you
just
keep coming up with great debates. Should there be stop signs?
That's just a few. That's just one example. But
and here I was thinking that even if we lost this debate, you two conceded that you were libertarian so much, I'd feel like we won the broader point. But now you're to your
now
scare
for stop signs. Now I'm for stop signs. But when it comes to AI, when it comes to like the ability to create bioweapons, or when it comes to Pete Hegseth saying that we're going to have agentic AI that will allow weapon systems to make decisions on their own, we can't leave it in the realm of, well, there will be consequences and then we'll learn from that, because we might not have an opportunity to. And in order to stop that, we would need, as a people, to come together with self-determination and regulate that and stop it. And does anybody here think that in the current political economy, with the size of big tech and the power that it has, that's even a conversation that could ever get off the ground in Washington? And if you think that it could, then maybe, sure, big tech is okay. If you don't think that it's possible to stave them off from doing this, then overall, it's way too risky.
Let's get another question.
So one thing that hasn't come up yet, I think, is the issue of cybersecurity. And we saw a couple months ago the chaos that happens when AWS goes down. Since we're talking about big tech specifically, how do you think the consolidation of tech influences cybersecurity for better or for worse?
I mean, this is why I love solar power. I'm serious. I was completely serious about that because the grid is so concentrated. And I think maybe the reason that we didn't bring it up in this context, although AWS is a really good example, is that it's how we define big tech. We didn't set any parameters about that before the debate, but I think maybe there's an argument that some of these companies operating the grid don't technically constitute big tech, but I think the level of concentrated power in the hands of somewhere like AWS, which there's a point brought up earlier about how, of course, the companies are dependent on government. So, I mean, to me, I think of that and I'm like, yes, that means they're going to comply when government asks them for something. That means they're going to be vulnerable in all of the same ways because they're fundamentally in a collaborative relationship. And so Amazon cannot be disentangled from AWS. Google can't be disentangled from its ad service. And in those ways, I think we see how the bigness in particular is a scourge.
Big tech means concentrated power. Robby, Liz, what do you think?
Look, I would remind the viewers that in the last 20 years, there has been incredible dynamism in this sector. The top 5 companies, what they are, the biggest ones, the ones that have the most money, switches constantly. So to think we've settled into some permanent state where it's the 5 that it is that have this indomitable position, some of what they own is just vibes and can be gone like that. And that is what has happened to so many of the internet companies previously. We could go through all the examples of the power of MySpace's market share. Didn't matter very much a year later. It sells for $500 million, and the next year it's worth $87 million. This has happened in the tech space over and over and over again. Yes, we can't predict or conceive of necessarily what would come along to beat this big one or that. that doesn't mean it hasn't happened every single time so far. In fact, it has. There's a little bit of a moral panic about this thing that has resolved itself via market forces each and every single time thus far.
It's what Rothbard would call a compulsory cartel, though, at this point, because they've been co-opted by the government over and over again to the point where they aren't going to fail like MySpace because so much of their business is dependent on the government, which means they're so much more easily coerced by the government. And I think that's frightening.
Next question. We've only got a couple of minutes left, so.
So those of you on the libertarian side have essentially been making an argument that the government is the problem and that private enterprise is the solution. It's the typical libertarian point of view. And I kind of am wondering, in this era of increased consolidation and corporate power consolidating in the hands of like a few individuals, think Musk, Bezos, etc. Is there a meaningful difference between a government and a sufficiently powerful megacorporation in a world where some people call this neo-feudalism?
I mean, we still have a choice whether or not we use any of the products put out by these mega corporations for the most part. And I think the other thing is, like, what is the alternative here, right? If you're saying that these are, is there a difference? We should just have the government things. Would you want, no matter what your politics are, would you trust the Trump administration right now to be in charge of deciding which companies get to be how big? When you start saying that the market shouldn't decide the size of companies or how successful companies are, and government regulators should decide that, you're not asking some omniscient good power to do it. You're asking the actual people that run the government to be the ones that get to make decisions about the market, that get to make decisions about the tech we use and the things we see. And that is always more scary to me than any sort of corporate power.
Donald Trump agrees that the government should be bigger than big tech, which is why he's going to decide which of the companies merge, Netflix or Paramount or Warner Brothers. That's up to him because he doesn't think big tech should be making that call. The government should.
Sir?
Sure. So with regards to, like, you mentioned all these benefits in terms of, like, people being able to spend more time with their family, all these things being done more efficiently, but wouldn't you say that it's mostly the case that those benefits accrue to people who are already pretty bright and intelligent and capable of planning ahead of time and, making decisions that aren't necessarily, like, the most efficient thing? Like, for instance, I think your average person's interaction with big tech is maybe they're spending less time with shopping for groceries or something because they can pick these things up from, get these things delivered. But most of that free time that they have is now just eaten by, again, spending more time, betting on FanDuel or doing, watching something on TikTok, and that's not really that. Maybe like someone like yourself who's very, intelligent and forward-thinking and can say like, oh, I can resist the temptation that these sort of like key jangling apps have in front of my face. But that's not the experience for like most people.
There is a massive class divide in screen time use. The research does find that.
Yeah, and that's a great point, and we should have actually hammered them more with online gambling because, good Lord, like there's maybe a pure libertarian can make a theoretical argument that it's good that you can gamble on absolutely everything at any time, but I don't think anybody serious, anybody like human would believe that.
Okay, I currently live though in like a redneck portion of Ohio, so I'm going to be the like Miss Area from Real America here. I'm going to say that like I have witnessed nothing like the problems with technology amongst the sort of normie people that I'm around all the time there, as I have with like people in Washington D.C.
No, they're all
so I think you can't. I think it's kind of very classist to make a sort of assumption that okay, well we might be able to handle it, but these plebes can't. Like I'm really wary of sort of making that
actually.
Sort of case.
I am too. I think that's entirely fair.
And I think, with all respect to Mr. Question Asker, if anything, it's the reverse, and it is the most affluent and privileged people who are negatively affected by social media. And in fact, the quintessential test case of this, the one person on Earth we can probably conclusively state has clearly been rattled by social media in some way, is also one of the richest and most powerful, Elon Musk.
All right, that's all the time we have for questions right now. However, There is an after party. It's at a bar across the street, and all of our debaters are going to be there, at least for a little while. If you have more questions, you can ask them later. I'll give you more information when the debate is over here. So you've heard from the debaters. They've argued with each other. They've done some silly stuff with bananas and Larry Ellison videos, and you've gotten to ask them questions yourselves. So we are just about to the end of our debate, and it's now time for our closing statements. This is going to be 2 minutes from each debater. Once again, we are going to go back and forth between reason and breaking points, and we are going to start with reason. Choose your fighter.
Is that a Cheetah Girls DVD on the ground? I can't.
That's the AOL sign-on CD that my mom inexplicably still had in her den.
All right, my time's going, and I don't have much to add. I've made most of my points. I saved the best for last, however. Now, I hope we've convinced you that we don't always appreciate it, but tech companies are doing us a lot of good. So I want to just try to refute one last time one particular argument raised by my opponents that we could still have what we like about tech, even if the companies were so much smaller and more numerous. I think the cold hard truth is that we simply cannot. We could not retain the benefits of the tech by breaking them up, making them smaller, making them more regulated, significantly more regulated, or making them more subject to liability. There is actually already robust competition and investment in tech, despite this alleged dominance of these small number of companies, because smaller firms, they're started by venture capitalists that are competing to be acquired by larger capitalists, and the large companies themselves are clearly not resting on their laurels. They are spending an unfathomable amount of money on research and development to stay ahead. I mean, what would happen if the federal government did to big tech what our maybe not these specific opponents, but the broader opponents in this argument want to do, break up these companies? I mean, think it through. Think of Google's core functions being broken up into a million of smaller companies that are not allowed to talk to each other. That's what the antitrust division of the federal government does. It comes, I mean, this would be costly litigation that would go on for 10 years to say who was still allowed to talk to each other in this company. There's no way I think the user experience would be so good. But I wanted to save the, to my view, best example of why big tech is good for last. One of the leading causes of deaths in America, frankly around the world, is actually car accidents. Roughly 40,000 deaths every year in this country alone. Thanks to big tech, to Google and to Tesla, we're now doing driverless cars. They are, by all studies so far, orders of magnitude safer than cars. This is big tech doing good, that within 10 years, we could reduce the number of people who die from 40,000 a year to nothing if big tech succeeds on this gambit. That is a lot of good that I would argue it goes beyond so much of the, yes, justifiable harms our opponents have raised. That alone. Thank you.
Ryan, 2 minutes.
I'll go so I can...
you can leave your microphone there.
I'll go so I can quickly respond to Robby. So Robby's claim here is that big tech is good because it is good and is getting better, and they're putting their money in, and because their coordination allows them to innovate. So there's two ways that maybe three ways we can answer that question. First of all, you could just use your common sense. Is the tech that you're using today better than the tech was a couple of years ago? That's one question. That's one. Just ask yourself that. Second way would be to ask Mark Zuckerberg himself whether he believes in using the money and the market power that he has for innovation. In one of these antitrust suits, they uncovered an email of his where he said, "It is better to buy than to compete." And he went about buying all of his potential competition and just destroying it and putting the software engineers on little pensions, and then when they were vested, getting rid of them. The third way is to think about if it's true that big tech and this monopolistic control empowers them to be really good, where has the most innovation come from over the last several years? If we were a completely closed economy, we would have seen very little of it. TikTok. You can love it, you can hate it. It is clearly an extraordinarily impressive piece of technology. We did not create it, not because we're idiots, but because everybody who would have created it was bought at 10x of whatever their idiot VCs put in, and then muzzled and put to bed. So if it's the case that big tech is able to innovate and get better, why are they not doing it?
Elizabeth Nolan Brown, 2 minutes.
It's making us dumb or too lost in fantasy. It's especially bad for women. It's ushering in bad morals and frivolity and sometimes even triggering self-harm. I'm talking about reading novels, of course. In the 18th and 19th century, novels got the full moral panic treatment, with pundits voicing concerns about depravity and distorted sexuality and suicide contagion and intellectual decline that they would bring. We've seen the same panics about radio, television, every new popular genre of music, video games, and so on. So I'm wary of anyone insisting that this time it's different. Folks have said that other times too. Humans have a natural inclination to fear new things and worry about generational decline. Today's technology gets blamed for a lot of trends, though, that were started long before today's technology existed. You want to talk about atomization and loneliness epidemics or the decline in adult friendships? Those are trends we've been seeing for 75 years. You want to talk about NSA surveillance? Again, something that long predates social media and smartphones. Today's tech also gets held up to unrealistic alternatives, like if we weren't spending so much time on our phones, we'd all be out joining civic organizations and reading Tolstoy and, taking artful Polaroid pictures and milking our own cows, when in reality, people, especially young people, would just be watching trash TV or getting drunk or drag racing or whatever. So TikTok might not be the best use of our time, but neither are many, many alternatives. Our opponents here have brought up a lot of frightening things that are going on with government and big tech today, but I submit that a lot of these problems are not problems of big tech, they are problems of big government, and they would not be solved if we had smaller tech companies. Big government would still be able to go after and enforce sort of these frightening things on tech companies no matter their size. And in fact, tech companies, a lot of diverse tech companies, they would still be subject to this sort of horrible government surveillance and power. So our enemy here is big government, not big tech. When we ask whether big tech has done more good or harm, we need to stop comparing it to some sort of idealized past, and we need to stop comparing it to speculation about some dystopian future. We should look plainly at our day-to-day lives and consider the downside, sure, but also all the way the big tech enables connection, communication, convenience, efficiency, employment, enjoyment, and more. And I think when we do answer that, the answer to the big tech cost-benefit analysis becomes very clear.
Emily Jashinsky, take us home. Final statement from Breaking
Let's
Points.
do it. I won't even photograph you. I just cannot fundamentally separate big tech and big government. If we concede that big government is the problem here, big tech was founded by big government. Big tech is completely dependent on big government. You can go down the list of companies, and maybe one example that's not is like Snapchat, but if you go down, although we may find out, but if you go down the list of these companies, they were in so many cases like literally created by the government, or they've snapped up these other companies that were created by ITQ, that's the CIA's venture capital fund. The amount of these companies that have been snatched up by big tech over the years is astounding. And the Tesla example I find fascinating, actually, because yes, the lives that will be saved, I completely agree, by Tesla, and I think we can all look forward to that. We have accustomed ourselves to a degree of barbarity and death through the automobile that is very sad, as much as we love cars and as American as cars are. But also, think about during COVID. I mean, the latent power here that is being established, we're just being asked to kind of accept it. It's not harmful because it hasn't happened yet. I mean, during COVID, if you didn't want to get the vaccine, or you wanted to go to the bar, or you wanted to live out the plot of Eddington, whatever it is, and you had a Tesla 10 years from now, these cars are going to have kill switches in them. There's already been legislation passed about government kill switches in these cars. So if we become dependent on, let's say, Tesla, which I don't necessarily define as big tech, but let's cede that point, and say that its tech has been accelerated by Google, which is definitely big tech. I mean, how many excess deaths happened from isolation during COVID? A ton. Overdose. I mean, it was happening all over the place from isolation, not just from, we talk about medical stuff and over again, but just being locked in your house. We saw what that does to you. And the government will soon have the power to do that based on ideology, based on personal lifestyle choices, and it's thanks to big tech. Larry Ellison is bragging about the relationship between big government and big tech. So if you think big government is the problem, then big tech sure as hell is also the problem. Thank you.
Do we need to play it one more time?
The debate is over, Ryan. That is our debate. Thank you so much to our debaters here. It is now time for our second vote. So, I want you to remember that the winner is the team that shifts the most votes towards their side. Please follow the instructions on the screen, cast your second vote, and we are going to find out who won this debate in just a little bit. Now, because this is a debate with a winner, there are going to be prizes. So while you are voting, we're going to see what the winners are going to get.
Do I win 250 hours of America Online?
I think, yes, Liz also brought her own set of prizes, which we're going to distribute based on, I'm sure there's some sort of random number generator that we can find online here. So our prize bags are a kind of a mix of new tech, old tech, and anti-tech. I am told, for example, that this is a Faraday pouch to prevent anyone from scanning your devices if you don't want the government to know what is on your phone or what photos you have taken of this event tonight. This, I guess, is the key. Tech can stop government from abusing big tech, apparently. We also have, I'm not sure I'd ever seen one before, but this is an abacus. To do math, if you don't have a calculator, I suppose. We have an old horse and buggy. This is a pencil sharpener for your pencil when you write in Liz's notebook there. We've got, this is this is a pen and like letter opening set, I guess, for people who still want to use mail. And then somewhere in here, we have AirTags, so that Liz will never lose her phone again. So this is our prize basket. There's something for everybody here, which is also true of Reason Magazine, which is where I work. And while we are tabulating the vote here, I do want to tell you just a little bit about it. Before we go ahead, we are now going to close the second vote. So this is your last chance to vote that second time. We do need just a few minutes to tabulate the results. Right, so I want to talk just a little bit about Reason here. Reason is the magazine of free minds and free markets. It has been the premier magazine of libertarian ideas for more than 50 years, but today we are much more than a magazine. We have embraced big tech. We have a great video team. You can find us on YouTube. We have events like this one. We have also embraced the analog life. And we have podcasts. Every week, Robby Soave co-hosts Free Media. You should also check out, if I do say so myself, the Reason Roundtable. So I'm the host, and every week I'm joined by Catherine Mangue-Ward, Nick Gillespie, Matt Welch, and sometimes special guests. Robby, Liz Nolan Brown, Emily Jashinsky has been on the show. It was great. So check out the Reason Roundtable podcast. It is a discussion of news, culture from a libertarian perspective. It's fun, it's feisty, it's informative, we hope. And of course, we also have a whole lot of newsletters these days, so many newsletters, not even on Substack, because there are alternatives to tech platforms. Right, so in addition to the Reason Roundup, which you can start your day, it's written by Liz Wolfe. It's a sort of feisty take on the news of the day. We have newsletters from both Robby and Liz Nolan Brown. Robby's newsletter covers the media in all its mess and bias. It's not a great time for the media, but it is a good time to be writing about it. Robby does that several times a week on his newsletter. And Elizabeth Nolan Brown writes about sex and tech. That is, in fact, the title of her newsletter. She is your guide to everything from kids and phones and the data on what's happening there to orgasmic meditation cults, as well as antitrust law. Sorry, they're not a cult. Definitely not a cult. There really is something for everyone at Reason. Even if you are not a libertarian, we think you'll like it. Just expose yourself to an alternative viewpoint. And just to give you an idea of what Reason is like, we have a video or two to show you while we finish counting the votes. Let us play that now.
Thank you for coming today to this masturbatory display of political theater.
Yep.
All right, who can ask the stupidest question?
What exactly is Facebook?
Did anybody bring props?
I believe the Constitution generally applies to government.
Yeah.
I love a certain kind of chocolate.
Relevant.
Your user agreement sucks.
Your budget sucks.
Do you have any idea how many of your users actually read the terms of service?
Probably more than the amount of congressmen who read the budgets they pass.
And even if they read it, they may not understand it.
No shit.
I'm a lawyer, I have no idea what that means.
But I bet you'd still vote for it.
Mumbles.
How many apps are there?
Is it an alternative to Facebook in the private sector?
The rest of the internet?
Second-rate Wilford Brimley, go.
You are hurting people.
You are bombing countries.
Congressman Meat Sweat, go.
Congress is good at two things: doing nothing and overreacting.
Oh, and spending. There's three things.
Diane, what should Facebook do?
Take millions of Americans' personal information without their knowledge.
Jesus, I hate this place.
The NSA already does that.
That's alarming.
You let it happen.
Are you angry about that?
Yes.
You're upset about this? We're upset about this?
Are you?
Pretty obvious to me that someone is listening to the audio on our phones.
You voted for that. Is no one reading any of the bills at all?
Small head, big shirt, go.
My name's Mark Wayne Mullen, and feel free to use that name.
Small head, big shirt.
How do I keep that from happening? Is there settings within the app that I need to go to block all that?
You set your shirt for medium?
I just Googled I just put on your website Andrew Kinzinger, and he looks a lot like me.
To be fair, you look like every quarterback who peaked in high school.
You are tracking everyone.
No, you're tracking everyone.
Low rent meatloaf.
I don't want him to have any information on me.
Yeah, it's creepy.
Chappaquiddick Jr.
We've seen that with a foreign actor.
Cumberbatch. Budget Matlock.
I'm a little disappointed in this hearing today.
I agree.
What do we tell our constituents, given what's happened here?
I think you should just apologize.
Yeah, you know what? Let me just announce I will not be seeking re-election next term.
Do you believe you're more responsible with millions of Americans' personal data than the federal government would be?
Yes.
One thing I think about this debate is that it is probably better than the debates they have in Congress about big tech. So thank you again to our debaters. I do believe we are ready to announce our winner. We're going to start by looking at the results of the first vote from before the debate. All right, so we have 34.8% for reasons does more good, 37% does more harm for breaking points, and 28.2% of you were undecided. Let's go to the second slide and see the winner. All right, the winner is breaking points, moving 14.3% of the vote towards their side. We counted the vote with technology, I'll point out, but you guys get the Faraday pouch as well as the nice, that's really nice little pens and all of the rest of it, as well as the thrill of victory. Thank you so much to our debaters. Special thank you to our sponsors of this debate, the Arthur N. Root Foundation, the Foundation for Responsible Television, and the estate of William K. Gordon III. Thanks to all of you for coming out tonight. Let's keep the conversation going at the after party. The bar is Ginza. It is directly across the street. Karaoke room. All of our debaters will be there. Let's move that direction towards the bar right now. Thank you all so much for coming.